you again. Finally. Ugh, I've been waiting forever for this one. This week we're discovering Trine 2. You may recall from last year that Trine 1 was one of my favorite games that I had ever played. Beautiful visuals, even more beautiful soundtrack, gameplay that rewarded thinking outside the box, just good all around. So how'd the sequel deliver? Let's begin with the visuals. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. Even when it tries to look evil and gritty, everything is stunning. I almost never felt lost in a level, and each screen holds to the theme of the level while maintaining subtle shifts to make sure the environments feel fresh and interesting. I never felt like I saw the same place twice. When you can make the inside of a giant worm interesting to look at and slightly fascinating, you're showing off an immense amount of talent. Now if you would just let me look at it. Designers, please stop making puzzles that revolve around darkness. It is not a fun mechanic to wander around in the dark lost. That goes for all games, not just Trine 2 though, and the darkness puzzles are mercifully short-lived. The music was equally gorgeous once again. I might have the tiny nitpick that every now and then the soundtracks would sound a little bit more generic than in the first game, but they were still beautiful, and I would not have that nitpick had the first game not so effectively spoiled me. And on some level I feel like that's the type of complaint you're going to end up with when a game is over double the length of the original. This game is so much more filled with everything, content, story, music, than its predecessor. You begin the story as each member of the party in turn, as this Trine comes to them, gathering the trio to save the world once more. You travel through the goblin-infested forest full of magical plants to the castle of a long-dead kingdom. There are several important gameplay differences as you travel, though. I think the developers were on to how I was playing the first game and have made some adjustments. Most experience orbs are no longer in bottles, instead floating in place. That means I can't conjure a tiny box and knock them down to me. I actually have to solve the puzzle. This made it harder to break the jumping puzzles. You may recall in the first game you could have 4 boxes, large or small, 4 planks, and a floating platform. On top of that, certain magical artifacts could give you even more, like another entire floating platform. This rather effectively made any jumping puzzle surmountable by chaining boxes, planks, and your extra platform. Instead, in the sequel, you can now only conjure 4 large or small boxes and 2 planks. On top of this, the developers focused far less on jumping puzzles to progress the story. Many more challengers require new interactions to progress, such as moving parts to open a doorway, getting magic water to a location, or slow-moving switches in harm's way. This design ends up coming across as more cluttered than the original. Some of the puzzles also frustrated me to no end because they just didn't seem to work. 2 in particular seemed flat out broken and almost entirely halted my progress through the game. First, there was this odd set of poles that rotated in a circle to raise a massive stone. As soon as you stepped off the poles, it would begin quickly to go back down. No matter what I tried, I couldn't pin the wheel in place either because the pole also spun in place with the slightest provocation. Then, later in the game, the series of metal poles that moved appeared. I had never seen something like this before, nor had the vaguest idea what it did. I was supposed to somehow move each of the parts into position while artificial lightning struck the nearby water. I would never have made it past either of these if I hadn't found out how to break this game too. There were lots of little things you could do with the wizard if you got creative. The longest plank possible, with 3 boxes stacked on the back of it, and another plank in front of it for extension, provided an excellent bridge over long gaps. Conjured objects still stick into spikes, which I took advantage of whenever possible. I noticed far less spikes in this game, though, probably for this reason. What absolutely broke the game, however, wasn't creative thinking this time. Instead, it was what I can only assume was an oversight. The rogue can unlock an ability that fires a zone of low gravity in which everything moves in slow motion. In this zone, you can jump higher, and I solved several vertical jumping puzzles by precariously stacking boxes inside the zone, jumping onto them, creating a new platform inside the zone, but where I needed to be, and quickly jumping to the platform, then to where I was headed before they could fall to the ground. What was even stranger and unintended, though, was the way the zone interacted with activatable objects, such as closed doors. If shot in the right place, it would simply open the door, or push the movable objects to their new position. The zone was how I solved both of the previously mentioned puzzles, and I really don't know how they would have ever been solved if I hadn't had it. If this was an intended interaction, then I'm incredibly confused. Once I had unlocked all the wizard's building capacity, the low gravity zone, and the knight's ability to defy gravity and fly with his shield like a hang glider, gaps became a complete joke. I guess that's why the developers focused much less on traditional jumping puzzles, and much more on vertical jumping puzzles and puzzles that didn't involve jumping whatsoever. While I can understand that focus, it also led to the game not feeling as tightly composed as the original. Another thing that I missed were the artifacts that would be hidden throughout each level in various chests, and gave you a legitimate reason to explore each level in every corner. Now the only hidden things of use are more experience orbs that usually don't give enough experience to be worth going above and beyond to scour the level for them. That isn't to say there aren't still chests. Now they just contain writings from characters that help hint at the backstory of what happened to the kingdom. Not only is this meaningless because it's obvious from the outset what happened as soon as all the pieces are in play, but quite a few of them...
My sister and I have a secret to hold. I love her so much. We are 8 years old.
I have a feeling that wasn't the plan. So what was so obvious about the story? Well, here are the pieces. There's a mysterious figure using magical portals to watch you and the Trine. Once in the forest, you find a beautiful talking plant that tells you to find her sister. The ruined castle is full of signs and notes that aren't hidden about the royal sisters. You meet the younger sister, whose levels are full of magical portals that move you from one place to another instantly, and she talks about her older sister being in danger and you three need to save her. Also, the younger sister is the queen of the destroyed kingdom. If you've watched, listened to, or read any fantasy narrative in the last 30 years, you probably can see what went down. Younger sister wanted to be queen, used her magic to banish older sister to the forest, which is why it's magical and alive. The kingdom fell apart because that's just what happens when a ruler is evil. She's the witch that's spying on you to steal the Trine, probably to magic her kingdom back to not being destroyed. Tale as old as time, but not as boring as it might be due to being able to play through such a beautiful world. The story is thrown for a twist when instead of successfully saving the older sister, the evil sister uses her magic to banish you to a dungeon in the middle of the goblins' territory. Thank goodness goblins are stupid, otherwise you'd never escape. You get up and above the door out of view, and they open the door to run inside and see where you went. A few dead goblins later, and now you're back outside and on your way back to the rescue. The queen's magic isn't enough to stop you from saving the older sister this time, and with a final boss fight against a magically enslaved dragon, the credits roll.
The
So the
end.
princess and the pumpkins had been rescued, and the great adventure drew to a close.
The end? You wish we've got a surprise. Ho, goblins are afoot.
Yup, the game isn't over. After the first game's ending, this was a complete shock to me. The goblins are back for revenge as they capture the wizard's obnoxious, abrasive wife before attacking the kingdom, where you're beginning to celebrate as heroes in full force. You try and fight your way back through the horde, but can't fight back with a hostage at their disposal. Which does not prevent the wife from screaming at the wizard, accusing him of faking this entire kidnapping to get out of having been late getting home. To keep her safe, we let ourselves be flown away to a distant land, with the threat that if we're ever seen in the kingdom again, she'll be killed. So now, in a deserted land, our heroes proceed to begin a trek back to civilization so they can fight the goblins. If you were going to fight and put the wife's life at risk, why did you let yourself be captured in the first place? Not that I would really care if she died. While she's been referenced often by the three main characters, she's only been on screen for less than 2 minutes, and I already completely hate her. But that aside, my point is, you three allowed yourself to be banished to keep her safe. And now you are de-exiling yourself and putting her right back in the danger she was in to begin with. Despite that small stain on the realism of the fantasy story with goblins, magical triangles, and dragons, this is still a lot of fun. You find your way to a goblin hideout before flying one of their helicopters directly to a goblin city in the clouds to bring the fight to their leader. Unfortunately, as much fun as the story is, both of the impossible puzzles I mentioned earlier take place in this part of the game. Some areas feel a bit less creative than usual, and too many areas had me asking out loud, what on earth am I expected to do this time? Trine 2's low-end creativity still knocks most competitors out of the ring without trying, though, and I always found my way along after some thinking and experimentation, puzzles only solved via the slow field excluded, of course. You make your way to the goblin boss, cursing the Trine not appearing to help you the entire way. He's built a tank with saw blades, flamethrowers, and spikes, but it's no match for the three of you. Especially since the rogue also had an invisibility move I unlocked that lets me run to the spawn point that heals everyone whenever things got too dangerous, without me being knocked down off the platforms. Once he falls, it's revealed the Trine was protecting the wife, so the goblins couldn't harm her, and the day is once again saved.
I'm afraid of opening the bag.
Mostly. Poor guy. And that leaves us with the ultimate question! How does Trine 2 stack up against Trine 1? The increased length, to begin with, was a welcome change. More Trine in my life is not something I will ever complain about. I did find it a little annoying that I had to re-unlock abilities that I'd already purchased in the first game. Why couldn't it have checked if I had a save file for Trine and port already unlocked abilities into Trine 2? Once I was entrenched and had regained some core abilities for the Wizard and Rogue, I didn't mind that change, though. I missed the hidden artifacts and added extra effects, but I also actually used the Knight in this game. You may recall that he saw almost no play whatsoever in my playthrough of the first game, but they made him just as useful as the other two for the sequel. The longer game resulted in some poorly made puzzles and a bit of a feeling of a bloated story, but even the weaker elements in this game are far better than in many other games I've played in this channel's entire offerings. There are still opportunities to feel clever, as if you've outthought the game, as well as moments where you feel clever because you realize what the game expected of you. With changes both for the better and for the worse, Trine 2 comes out on par with Trine 1, which would place my top 10 best games that I've ever played in a weird position where they would both have to share the same spot. If you enjoy a game with beautiful fantasy elements, excellent platforming, thought-provoking puzzles, and fun, if simple combat, Trine 2 will definitely fulfill all of what Trine 1 left you wanting more of. Second verse, not the same as the first, but equivalent. I've been waiting forever for this one. That's the flashlight, and that's the shot. All that work for just that.